What's up, family? I want to discuss something on my way to a fencing class right now because I'm trying some things new for 2023, right? And I was just thinking, because I seen this post where the brother was talking about Patrick David was saying, for every great man there's a great woman, and then he said the opposite. And he said, for every ruined man there's a ruined woman. I had to think about that, and maybe the wording in which he is saying it, because greatness and ruin, I don't know if those are the opposites of each other, right? But one can think about it. But when I think about all of the ruined men, I'm not talking about just people that have failed, people that are just a normal, regular, that haven't done anything magnificent, but the men that are ruined, that I personally know, and the ones that I see inside society, it definitely has a connection with the woman behind it as well. And it's not particularly just the fact that she caused it, but is that the choices that you made and who you chose caused the ruin, right? I mean, shit, look at the biggest case would be Kanye West, if one would think about it. But I could think about people that I personally know. And it was their choice that they made and who they chose that caused their ruin. It was always their choices. So it's not so much that it's the woman to blame, but it's the choices of who you chose that became the downfall and the ruin. And the reason I like this law of polarity, because for the law of polarity, and like many laws of the universe, they are a guide for how all things must be, the way things are. For one thing to exist, the complete opposite must also exist, right? So one cannot argue against balance. That's how the universe works. That's the only way things can be in existence, right? So there's no hot without cold. There's no truth without falsehood. There's no up without down, right? There's no black without white. There's no man without woman. There's no love without hate, right? That is polarity. That is how the universe is made. So when someone says anything, in order for that to be justified and true, then the complete opposite must exist. For a person to believe that there are a lot of ancient people, then there also must be a lot of very good people to exist. So what I think it does is it centers a high level of accountability on each and every person when you just think about the very law of polarity, right? Because I think about that all the time. That, while there's bad happening to people, there's good happening to people. Somebody say toxic masculinity, well, then you must be also justifying the existence of toxic femininity, right? You got to think about everything that you say. And it's a beautiful idea when you think about the law of polarity, because then it changes the way you think about things, what you blame, because blame also has to come with some sort of guilt, right? For everybody that is guilty, there's somebody who is innocent, right? And so I think that it serves for the things that we believe. We have to also believe in the complete opposite of those thoughts. So there's never the opportunity of one-sidedness in society or in the universe. And your goal is to ask yourself, why is it that you are on the wrong side of the coin if the opposite exists? In every aspect, ideology, mindset, thought, in every capability, in every thought, the opposite exists. So if the opposite exists, then that gives you a goal. The goal is to be on the opposite side. See, in life, we can see the polar opposite of what we want, but then the polar opposite of what we do want to will exist also. It exists also. So I think about that. There are times when I am of low energy, but that means that it's possible I could be of high energy. There are old people who are in their 70s who have Alzheimer's, and then there are some who have great memories, right? There are old people who have no energy and cracking bones, and then there are some people who are healthy and living like they're young. The polar opposite exists for all things. There are young men who die at an early age, and there are men who live a very long life. There are men who are poor, people who are rich. There are people who can do the exact same projects and one fail where another succeeds. So even when I think about the failure of others, that also means that the success can be possible too. Right? The success is possible as well, because that's the way the universe is designed. It's not my design, it's God's design. When one thing exists, the polar opposite exists. So there are polar opposites of our choices and polar opposites of the outcomes of those choices based on our focuses. So it gives me a positive outlook on the future, because if you take a look at all the things you don't like, the polar opposite also must exist as well. Polar opposite of this reality can exist. There was a time where the world was just black people, and we ran the world. We were the kings and the queens and the emperors and the tribalmen and all the inventors. But now look at it. We live in a world where white people run the world. This is the polar opposite reality we were born in. And things will flip themselves once again. That's just the way the world works. That's the way the universe works. You know, everything is a cycle. That's the beauty of it. So it gives me audacity to believe in things, you know, at a high level of optimism, knowing that it's not even just optimism, it's just mathematics. It's just the way that the world works. You can go through bad in life, you can go through good. But choices can create what side of that polar coin that you live on. So picking the right person chooses the right destiny. The polar opposite of that destiny can be produced from the polar opposite of those choices. That's a daily basis. Today I had little energy. I slept too late last night, or I went to sleep too late last night. So I overslept, but I needed my 9 because, you know, I got to get my muscle work in. So I'm on my way to go, you know, to a different type of training right now. Go do some fencing training at this moment, trying new things, right? And so I thought about it, though. If I did the polar opposite and I went to sleep early, I would have woke up with a lot of energy, and the outcome of my day would have been completely different than it is now. It would have been easier, right? And so I don't think about, you know, I don't feel sorry for myself at any point in time. I just think about getting on the polar opposite side of that. So yes, there are many people who are failed, and I think relationships is probably one of the highest orders of today, because people seem to be getting it at bad, very bad at relationships, more and more and more and more and more and more, right? And everybody wants to justify one side of everything. I had these sisters asking me about polygamy yesterday, and I said, well, listen, if you believe in the opposite, you have to believe in the opposite in some ways, in some forms. There's an existence. Right? And you know, I was talking to some single mothers, and I say, well, listen, you know, if the opposite would have worked out with, right, your person that you chose, and you have been able to go over promiscuous, ended up, you know, dead early, whatever case, the opposite exists as well. The way that we think about life right now, if we were born in a completely different country, we would think our feelings would be different. Our connotations will be different, because there's an opposite version of yourself in the way that you feel about things as well. Society is an interesting reality. Life is an interesting thing, because everything is just about choices. You know? Everything is about choices. And you have to be careful, because your life, you know, the outcome of your life is based on your choices. So that's the message for today. Think about the law of polarity. Think about the opposites. I don't care if it's coming in and out. I'm not repeating anything, man. It's just, it is what it is. Right? I don't know why it's going like that. Maybe it's just where I'm at. Can y'all hear me clearly now? So, you know, I think that that's the key, you know, and that's the power to it. Just think about that law of polarity. So for everything that you hate, there's an opposite of that. For everything that you love, there's an opposite of that, right? And that's why utilizing that law of polarity within, marketing and branding and self-development is key, because you can make people hate you or love you. But these are the most powerful ends of the spectrum. That's why success brings hate and success brings love, because the law of polarity. So you don't have to be, it's not that you were destined to pick the wrong person, right? It's not that, things had to become the way they are. There's a complete opposite, that they could have been different, and they can still be different. But you have to be able to get out the emotional connotation connected to the choices that you made, so that you can breathe life into a new outcome. And so regardless of where you at and why you are at right here, right now, right, there's a polar opposite that you can feel much better, you can feel brighter, you can feel happier, you can feel more joyful, alive, you can be more willful, you can be a person who acts in the now and don't leave things to task, right? The law of polarity exists. For the life that you live right now, there's a complete opposite version that is magnificent. So continue to work towards that, and continue to keep your mind open when it's time to think about things in reality, right? Most systems in the world are meant to control human beings. That's just it, and it's easier to control human beings when you're not trying to make their minds to be open, but you're trying to open their minds to make them. And that's what most people are doing. They're just trying to open the mind to make your mind so that it's made up for you, right? And so, I don't have the agenda of my own religion. I don't have the agenda of, creating some cult or things of that nature. My only goal is to help people think, because we live in a world where most people don't know how to think anymore, right? And it's going to get worse, but it can also get better, because remember, if things are getting worse, something is getting better. So how do you be on the side of things that's getting better? There's somebody going through a terrible relationship. There's somebody going through a great one in the same year, right? Somebody having a beautiful relationship with a black woman. Somebody having a terrible. They live in the same neighborhood. How? Why? What is the choices that they've made? How did they develop themselves? So we can't personalize and say it's me, me, me. Like, oh, it's just happening to me. And then we generalize that this is the whole world. No. It is your experience, and people who have negative experiences tend to share those negative experiences more. Just like in marketing, you can have 1 million customers that you satisfy. Those 10 that didn't get it right, those are the ones who are going to be louder than the people that have satisfaction. And so we intend to hear that more, not knowing that the polar opposite actually exists of that as well. You did? So I tend to think on the bright side of life, because there's always a dark side at the same time. It's up to you. I tend to think on the bright side of life. Remember that. It's always the opposite side. But life is about perspective. One person has a perspective from the top. Another person has a perspective from the bottom. And they both seeing two different things. Appreciate y'all. That's all I wanted to say real quick. You understand me? Tap into different laws of the universe, right? I'm telling you, it's so powerful, because once you learn them, it's a guide to how to deal with everything. It's a guide to being alive, being a high level being. And so I study these for that particular reason, because I want to know. I want to understand. And therefore, it's easy to get, you can get thrown on the wrong tracks. But then once you know the laws of the universe, all you got to do is utilize those formulas that God made. That's all you got to do. And sometimes when you have questions, just think about it. Think about the opposite of what you believe and what you feel, and justify the opposite, because it's easy to get stuck into a cognitive bias. And so that law of polarity works in that manner. You can be so steadfast in one thing. I don't know how people can think this. Why would somebody think this? Start to create the argument in your own head. Argue against your own thoughts and figure out why the opposite could also be true of what you wholeheartedly believe and or feel. Practice that exercise and you will become high level in your thought process. It is truly the exercise of real thinking. not the exercise of confirming what you already think, protecting what you already think. That is shallow faith. See, truth does require protection, right? But against falsehood, not against truth. So if there is a higher truth, then it will knock what you believe, because whatever you was believing at first wasn't powerful enough. You dig? But it does not require protection from truth. It only requires protection from falsehood. So when I think about things, I don't want to get caught up in what I just believe. I had to step back like, all right, I feel this way about that just because, I grew up this way. I think this way. This is who I am. So, of course, I'm going to fall on the opposite side of that spectrum. But let me see if I can put myself in the opposite shoes and think for the opposite side of that argument. You understand me? And that is power. You dig? So now you think differently. Man, peace.